Susan Sarandon, welcome to Hong Kong.
Thank you.
You sure know how to attract a crowd.
I think this is kind of like a performance art piece in the middle of a hallway in a convention center. I have to say this is a first for me, and you're being very focused so far. I think because of this wall of photographers, you're not seeing so many people walking by, but maybe at some point we could all get up and do like a choreographed dance and have a
Don't say that, we might
happening.
hold you to that.
Or that,
Or
we
not.
could do that.
Yeah, we could do that. Well, we're here to celebrate your life as an artist. How would you describe it so far?
My life?
As an artist?
Well, I'm happy, so I guess it's been a pretty good experiment so far. I think of my life as being art, not as, I don't think of myself as an artist any more than any of you. I think art is just the transformation of energy into something else, whether it be clothes, design, or children, or building, or cooking, or anything that you put, that you're focused and can be present and that brings pleasure to yourself and to someone else, I think is artful. I suppose if you manage to make a living doing it, it's kind of a bonus. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of different things, but that would be considered, I suppose, artistic. But the most lucrative has been film for sure. And I'm very grateful for that, but I never set out to be an actor, so that just kind of happened. They're already bored and leaving. So now we'll have...
Now we can talk.
Now we can really get
now
down
we can
to
relax and talk.
all the sexual things we're going to talk about that you're all going to miss. They're just,
Excellent. Let's get straight
to the next group of people that are walking by. Start taking surveys about what you did last. See, now they're paying attention again.
Well, you mentioned film. You continue to have an extensive career. I won't go into the numbers, but let's just say almost 100 films.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that you're probably just as well known for your work off camera as you are on camera. There is a sense of a responsibility that I think we all feel that you have towards being an active participant in this world that we live in. Where did that come from?
I was very lucky because I came of age in the tail end of the 60s, 70s, before corporations took over the media and you actually could see what was going on in the world. And part of being young and even slightly present was thinking that you could make a difference and actually seeing what was going on in the South in terms of voting registration and what was going on in Vietnam. And the drugs at that time were more expansive. The music at that time was pretty good. And I think that if you had half a brain, and I mean, I think now with the internet, for all the misinformation that's there, there's also an enormous amount of information. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to know and still be involved, it is possible to understand the ramifications of your government's policies or whatever. And then if you have any kind of imagination, and I started in this business at 20, if you can imagine yourself in a situation, then the next step is empathy, and once you have empathy, then the next step is action. So I think that most artists' job really is to have a perspective outside of the norm and to challenge that norm, however you do it, by just reframing what what information is being funneled into people's heads and giving them the opportunity to see things or to identify with people that they don't normally identify with, And then what you do from there is the viewers or the audience's choice. I don't think it's an artist's, I use that word, and I don't think it's an artist's job to tell people what to do, but I think it's definitely the joy of being in any kind of, whether it's music or criticism or writing or television or acting or painting, is the opportunity to reframe what people are seeing and give them the opportunity to see their world differently, because we all write our stories and they're very limited stories, and when you're given the opportunity to see yourself in someone else, I think that's religious, actually, and it's a very, very special thing to be part of that process. And I think everyone has the ability to, in some way, sing or dance or write. I mean, if you go to Central American countries or South American countries or Bali, everyone plays instruments, they dance. It isn't separate from their daily lives, and they're not embarrassed to write things down and share things in a way that's a little bit out of the ordinary. Did I answer any of that question?
Yes, you did. But what's interesting, you said that the seeds of activism are empathy and imagination. Could the same be said about acting? Because you need a sense of empathy towards your character and imagination of what that character is going through.
Acting is a strange thing. I mean, anybody can do it. Kids do it all the time. It's, you know, and it's a business where mediocrity is rewarded abundantly, so you can't really take it too seriously. But I think that there's some element of it that's kind of like throwing a pot. You know, you paint it, you put it in, and it comes out slightly different. It comes out a different size. It comes out a different color. Sometimes you can be real and it's pretty boring. Other people can have incredible technique and it's very moving. Some people don't seem like they're doing anything, and then when you see it on the screen, it's incredible. Or if you see something in the theater, it's amazing and they're not even thinking about what they're doing. So part of what I think is so suggestive, so seductive about it is that you never get it right. You see it and you're like still trying to always figure it out, because you think, God, when I did that, it was fabulous. It felt, I was so in it, and now I see it and it's shot in a weird way and you don't even see this part, or they've cut that. And so I think that it's something that you have to really learn to surrender. This is where I'm very envious of painters or anyone that has a lonely profession where they create by themselves. I love collaboration. For me, it's like falling in love every time you do a project, but you have no control over the final product. Even if you're a producer, executive producer, then the studio gets in there and they sell it wrong, or they put terrible music, or I mean, there's just so many more ways for a movie to go wrong than right. So you learn very early on to just kind of send it off to college and hold your breath and hope that it marries someone that's going to make him happy. But you can't really ever live for the outcome. And that's a great thing to learn. I mean, that's a really nice way to live your life. And I remember years ago speaking at Harvard, and everybody that I was talking to was going to be a lawyer or a doctor. And they were saying, I don't understand, you know, you don't know when your vacations are, you don't know what your future's going to be like. And I said, well, what about if they socialize medicine? I mean, how many lawyers can we actually have? You know, there is a place all the time for people that create. You're going to need that. You know, from the beginning of time, there have been storytellers, and I think it's just such a responsibility and such an honor to be a storyteller of any kind, whether it's a visual arts thing or it's any kind of story that you're telling. I know that in fashion sometimes they talk about stories. I mean, I don't understand anything about, when I read reviews for paintings or art, it just infuriates me because it seems like,
well, it's so subjective, isn't it?
well, it feels more like the criticism is trying to secure something which should be open-ended, something that is now going to be bound by time and definition, and really most of the art that takes you somewhere else is indescribable. The more you try to put it into words and nail it down, I think the more injustice it does to it. I don't mean to ruin anyone's job here that's a critic, but
Oh, do.
it reminds me of when I was in college and I had to give a critique of a poem, and you just bullshit your way through the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on and on, but I think it's an individual response, an individual reaction that the observer has with whatever they're looking at. And, sometimes the most interesting art is that which evokes responses that are completely at each end of the spectrum. And that's true of film or anything, but at least something's happening that is making your mind explode for 2 seconds. And I think that's what art should be. And whether it means traveling somewhere and seeing the incredible focus that the culture puts on flowers and wrapping, and that's so different than an American's view. Having to take your shoes off all the time. I mean, anything. The colors. Each culture offers such amazing contributions just in the way people live their lives and the way that they wrap themselves in their identities and how they tell their stories. And so many of our stories are arbitrary anyway. So why not be exposed to, unless you're going to take hallucinogens, other cultures. And
What stories then for you? I mean, you've made films that have crossed multiple generations. People from many generations have said, that there are films of yours that have connected with them, have touched them in some way, whether we're looking at a cult classic like Rocky Horror Picture Show, or films like Lorenzo's Oil, Pretty Baby, Bull Durham, Thelma and Louise, Dead Man Walking, for which you won the Oscar.
They're all love stories. They're all love stories of one kind or another that encourage people to be the protagonist in their own life. I think that's what films can do. They can empower people to take small steps or big steps. I mean, if you see something like Selma, that celebrates the courage that's in every person when it's called upon. But if you see something like White Palace, it just means that you leave the boyfriend that makes you feel bad about yourself. And all of those are really brave things. And then anytime someone reaches out to be intimate with another human being, I think is the most courageous act that a person can perform. And so I mean, even The Client was really a love story between a 10-year-old and a woman. But so it doesn't really matter. The details of the gender, the color, the age, the circumstances are all just details. But I think the important thing is that people feel empowered in some way to be authentic and to possibly, I mean, being authentic is your life's job, right? To try to figure out how to do that.
Which roles then for you do you think were game changers for you? The ones that actually you felt changed personally?
They all were. Some of them are more obviously, I think, changed the audience more. I mean, certainly Dead Man Walking started a dialogue that took Sister Helen from having audiences of 200 to 2,000, and her book was in every language after that, and that's an obvious thing. But people call films political when they challenge the status quo, but when films reinforce sexism, ageism, racism, they are as political as films that challenge it. It's just that we don't notice and we don't call them that. But that's why I think you have to be responsible, because you're inviting people into a space where they are dreaming and watching, and maybe it's in their home or maybe it's with other people if you're lucky, and all these ideas and stereotypes and things are acting upon them, and I think it can really make a difference, especially young people. Mm-hmm. And it can challenge, what does it mean to be, who are our heroes? What color are they? What gender are they? What age are they? Who do we respect? Who do we disrespect? Why do we respect them? Why do we want to be like them? How do you settle arguments? How do you settle conflict? What do women want? What's funny? The Nutty Professor wasn't, I don't know if you saw the latest Nutty Professor, which was not the one with Eddie Murphy, the one with Eddie Murphy, not the one before that, but that was a really interesting film, and that was incredibly political, because you're cheering for the really hot young girl to be with the fat guy, and the really handsome guy is just a cad, That's political.
How do you mentioned staying authentic. How do you stay authentic at a time and perhaps in an industry where it is difficult to do so? How do you have the courage to just stay true to yourself?
Well, I think it's an ongoing process, because it's always, something's always pulling you one way or another. And I mean, luckily, my life is just complete chaos. And having children just adds to that. And so you're all laughing who have children. As they grow, they need something different from you. You have to get to know them in a different way. As you age, you're going through changes. So I think that you're always having to listen to that voice that's inside you and try to stay authentic. And, when somebody says something and you feel that strange feeling that something's off, to stay with that feeling and try to identify it and not push it down and not throw a fuss and not, but to just be in that space is a very difficult thing. And I meditate. I try to be as present and conscious as possible, but I think there's so many distractions. I mean, look at what we're trying to do right now. It's crazy.
You're doing very well.
Having this conversation in the midst of all of this is nuts. But so I mean, I think you just do your best and try to remove your ego as much as you can. And I don't know. I don't have very many answers, really.
I read somewhere that you said you didn't take your career too seriously, but what you did take seriously was your life, and that becoming a mother challenged you most creatively.
I think being a mom, besides the patience you have to have and this an amazing amount of strength and fortitude and stamina, is imagination. And I'm the oldest of 9, so you would think I would be prepared to be a mom, and I became a mom really late. That's another whole story, but and so I was lucky in that sense, because I could stop working. I wasn't working as much when I was raising my kids, so I could really, they were so interesting to me and such a project. They were kind of my art form at that time. And they're so interesting, they're just all over the place now. I don't know. What was the question?
They challenged you. You felt most challenged creatively when you became a mom.
Yeah, well, the balance between trying to maintain control over your life and at the same time enjoy your children is an interesting one. I think, I mean, I really did, I'm still having, I mean, now, once you don't have to cut their meat, it's a whole new world. Traveling with them is so much more fun. I think most of the new music that I've found has been because of them, and they're reading a lot of the books that I really love, so I'm rereading, you know, my Murakami, my Kurt Vonnegut, you know, all of these things that they're so interested in now. They're all in the arts. They all have a really good sense of humor, so that saves the day very often. But I was lucky because I, through whatever circumstance, had my kids really late, and so I was not giving anything up, really. I didn't feel that way. And now I'm a grandmother for the first time. My daughter has a 6-month-old, and now she really understands how brilliant I was as a mother. Every day she says, I don't know how you did this, because I always drag them along, but I just love women, and I mean, sorry guys, I love men too, but what women manage to do in terms of family, and because no matter how great you are, dads out there, you're not doing what the woman has to do. It's just not designed that way.
Amen to that.
I mean, 2 gay guys, now I don't know how they're going to work that out in terms of the, you know, and my nephew is married and has a baby, and, you know, he's mostly at home now, so he's got that job. But somebody has to do that heavy lifting, you know, that happens for the first so many years, and it's somehow women manage to hold down full-time jobs and that other full-time job, and I'm not sure how we've done that, but congrats to all of us that have.
You've taken many risks in your life and in your career, and when we talk about the work that you do, as you described, punching holes in things, letting light shine in, so that on issues that perhaps would remain dark otherwise, standing up for something and raising awareness on something. You know, for some it might seem easy if you are someone who's famous to do that, but on the other side, it's a very difficult thing to do. Let's talk about the 1993 Academy Awards. A very big stage, over 1 billion people watching, and you chose that moment to raise an issue. You and your then partner chose an issue, took that moment to raise this issue about Haitian refugees who were being detained in Guantanamo Bay.
Well, I have to go back. There was a brownout. There were, you know, I don't know if you know the context, but there were a number of Haitian refugees who, Haiti was exploding at that point, and they were refugees, political refugees. But some of them were also HIV positive. They all had places to go in the United States, but they, as opposed to every other refugee of other colors, were put in Guantanamo and held in Guantanamo, where they kept them there, where we, the United States, kept them there in very, very inhumane circumstances. And it had been a couple of years already. Clinton, when Clinton got elected, he had promised to get them out, and then he didn't. And and there was rape happening, and you know, they were separated from their kids. There were some odd kids that were thrown in there, and I knew about it because, first of all, Jonathan Demme knew about it, and he told me, and there was a brownout. Journalists weren't reporting about it. Nobody was doing anything about it. We held a number of press conferences. Nothing happened. We got arrested. I was arrested with a number of church leaders and good old Jesse Jackson, and still nothing happened. And now it was the Academy Award. And I found that the things that I've regretted in my life have all been things that I haven't done. If I've done things and they haven't turned out well, then you can say you're sorry. But when you don't do things that you feel somehow you have an opportunity to address, the few times that that's happened to me was really uncomfortable. So I knew I was presenting, and I really felt that I had to bring, and I'd read letters. By this time, people were trying to kill themselves by swallowing cleaning fluid and things in Guantanamo. They were having a hunger strike. They were lying in a field. I had read letters from some of the mothers that were saying goodbye to their children who were trying to kill themselves. It was I mean, it was a major, desperate situation, and I felt that we were giving the award for, I forget if it was documentary or it wasn't DP, but it wasn't like the Actors Award. And I felt we had to do something. We didn't tell anybody. We tried to figure out 20, you know, the shortest way of saying it. We fought with each other about exactly what we would say, if it was refugees or what, how would they would be, you know, it caused this big thing. And then we got there, and I'm not sure how they started to get an inkling that maybe something was going to come down. They started looking for us, and we had to hide. It was very traumatic. And I'm somebody that was raised as a good little Catholic girl. You're not supposed to stop things. You're not supposed to interrupt people. You're supposed to help people finish their sentences, not interrupt them. So I was completely fucking traumatized. But I knew I had to do it, and we had memorized it. Obviously, it was not on the cue cards when we got on stage. Once we got on stage, people started screaming from the sides of the thing. Now, this is also, at this time, everybody's wearing red ribbons. Everyone in the audience has on a little red ribbon. And when we left the stage, when we had to leave the building, actually, nobody would make eye contact.
This is interesting, though, because these are people, these are artists as well.
These were people that were HIV positive, also.
And you didn't get any support from them?
Robin Williams, Richard Gere were supportive and got letters chastising them. We were thrown out of the academy, or
what did
banned
Charlton
for
Heston
the academy.
tell you?
Charlton Heston and
Moses.
I have the same birthday, so this just goes to show you that you can't believe in astrology at all. I mean, not the same year, obviously, but Charlton Heston said, well, everyone took it very personally. Like, he said that was like in his, I didn't know because it came out later. Well, there was a lot of press. And the press and the letters were threatening, and they were threatening on 2 counts because they were black and because they figured that if they were HIV positive, they had to be gay. So we activated 2 hate groups very strongly. Charlton Heston said that's like if someone invited, as if I invited them into my living room and they pissed on my rug. Now, so I said, which rug is he talking about? Because he wore that horrible toupee.
But doesn't that surprise you that these are people who are supposed to be supportive of a fellow actor?
Because people are, no. I mean, it's like expecting all the firefighters to feel the same way before going into Iraq. There were some people who understood that we shouldn't go in, and there were some people who had lost family members and just wanted to do something. I mean, actors are not, there's no group of people that all are disposed in the same way.
But you see a lot more
and they were
of these...
very scary, you know. It's very effective to be shunned. It's very hurtful. You don't even think about the death threats. What is the most upsetting is being cut off from your tribe and having people look away that are, you know, as you're coming to your seat and not wanting to make eye contact, you're like, whoa, this is really, but then the other thing is, and I guess this is totally ego in some way, is you can't, it's hard to live with yourself, really. If you have one of those moments where you can say something and you don't, or at least not take part in it and you don't, that haunts you for the rest of your life. So,
well, it worked.
It's
though,
very
didn't it?
self-serving. They did get out right after that. They got out, and so it does work because embarrassment with nations, with leaders, with anybody is probably the most effective, besides an economic boycott, to change any kind of policy. If there's enough press and enough embarrassment, people will actually remove toxins from their yogurt and do what you know, if you can educate the public and embarrass someone, I mean, it's a very effective means of changing. And there are people that didn't have a voice.
I'd like to open up the floor to anyone who has questions for Ms. Sarandon. Yes.
What's been my experience of Hong Kong so far? This. And last night, I haven't seen any art, and we really just got in. My son got in last night. I'm going to have, I guess, the rest of today. I was kind of hoping to figure out a way, maybe not tomorrow, but the next day to go outside and see, you know, someplace without tall buildings, like maybe on the water, or I don't know. We're gathering suggestions, but everyone's been really nice, and it's, you know, what I can see through the fog is really beautiful. And I rode around a little bit, you know, before I had to start getting ready yesterday, but this will be my last official convention appearance, and then I hope to see some art. We had a really nice dinner last night. So far, I haven't even gone to any like major parties or anything. I kind of don't even know when I'm sleeping. You know, I'm a little bit still off in terms of understanding what day it is. I think it's my daughter's birthday tomorrow, so I have to remember to get a hold of her. Is tomorrow the 15th?
Yes.
All right, yes. So far I'm okay. Yeah, it's pretty special. Yes.
Anybody? Yes.
Oh, there's a mic.
Thank you for your talk. Can you hear me? Hello?
No.
Yes. So you mentioned how, you know, storytellers and filmmakers kind of have a responsibility because every film is political, whether they like it or not. But then you also talked about how, as an actor or even as a producer, you have so little say in how a film turns out because it goes through so many hands. So what will it take, or who will it take for the film industry, particularly Hollywood, to become more inclusive and, you know, less sexist and less racist?
Well, all you can do is do the best you can do. And, you know, there's been a lot of outcry about more women, but I find some women have just, some women in powerful places have imitated the worst qualities of men. So I don't think it's just a gender thing. I think there's a lot of men who are in powerful positions that want to make good movies. One of the things I think is promising is that the problem with more controlled, smaller budget movies, for instance, because now the studios are, they're kind of got a corporate mentality. You don't have people making artistic decisions. You have all kinds of, you know, they look up, this is so funny, they look up like how many followers you have. They look up, you know, they don't cast necessarily the people that might be right for the part or the best for the part. They want to see how much the movie you did before made, even if that person was terrible in that movie, you know, that counts for something. And so that's why you see a lot of these packaged things that don't quite work. But if you have smaller movies that maybe stand a better chance of being something unique. I mean, I think Birdman was pretty brave. That was an enormous breakthrough in terms of just trying something different. But say you have some of these smaller films, they never could get distribution, but now you have so many different places. Festivals are very important in that way, but you have so many ways that people can make films less expensively and also find some kind of distribution for them. Some of the stuff that's on cable, like I've been watching Utopia. Do you know this show that's an English show? Oh my God, it's crazy good. It's amazing the way that it's filmed and what it is and what it's about. And so sometimes, or Black Mirror, I mean, there are some very interesting things that are done on TV now. But the lines between features and everything's getting blurred, and then people that maybe couldn't find distribution or being able to put up web series or being able to put out, I've been trying to do a documentary company, and we've been trying to get the rest of my funding if anyone out there wants to help. We've got really good filmmakers, and I think documentaries are, I mean, The Act of Killing, that wasn't just a documentary. I mean, that was an amazing film. And so more and more documentaries are stepping up and becoming really, really interesting and inventive. And animation, I've been doing a lot of now voices in very interesting, crazy animation series and with groups of people. So I think that's what's going to change things. But I guess my point was you can't, it's like loving, you know, you can't look at the stats and decide if it's a good deal and you'll go in. You just have to jump and keep your fingers crossed and do the best you can and get whatever you can out of it while it's happening. And that's the way I work. And then if they mess it up, then they mess it up. But you know, it can't rob me of the experience of actually doing it. You hope that everybody that agreed on what the vision of it was initially, and then, you know, is somewhere near what it was when you talked about it forever and ever, when you put it together. But, you know, then somebody at the studio says, oh, I don't know, you know, that ending's a little bit down. Let's get a happy ending in there that's completely has nothing to do with what the movie was, or they cut out those sections. I mean, it's crazy what happens when they when I did Thelma and Louise, the first thing I said to Ridley Scott was, if you test this, are they going to live at the end, you know? And he said to me, you definitely will die. I'm not sure about her. I went, okay, because I want to know, you know, where I'm going. I mean, so I guess you just, my point is that I don't know that you can get more control over something that's a collaborative. I think that happens in a lot of areas of when there's things that are created outside of yourself, unless you just keep everything for yourself and you paint for yourself, or like, what's her name, that the documentary that when they just found all of those photographs, Miriam, what was her? Meyer. I mean, like, wow, that's the most interesting thing of that, right? She just kept them all for herself. And they're amazing.
We have one question.
Hi, thank you for that. I just actually had a follow-up question in a sense when we're talking about films and documentaries and activism. And now that we have so many more platforms such as, you know, YouTube or Vimeo to get these out, how do you feel when we have things like government interference and they pull them down? We've had Under the Dome here, we've had India's Daughter. What are your feelings that it's gone through this huge process and we have these platforms, but then people still can't see them?
Well, I'm against censorship of any kind. I mean, but it's also interesting how people find a way to see things. There's always a way to futz with the system, and people have always, even in concentration camps, managed to smuggle out cookbooks and, you know, all kinds of collaborative efforts. So I'm kind of I have kind of pronoia, where I believe the universe is conspiring in my favor as opposed to paranoia. And so I believe in the human spirit is pretty strong, and you know, it's terrible, but the good news, whenever there's a crackdown of information, it just makes people want it more. And so I think that's kind of in our favor.
We are almost out of time. I think a quick one? Just a quick one?
Yeah. You mentioned motherhood and it being really hard, and, you know, just having kids being really difficult. Do you really think that women can have it all? Is that even possible?
I didn't mean difficult in the sense that it was a bad thing. I'm just saying that that motherhood, you have to admit how much time it takes, and if you're really going to have fun with it, that it takes creativity and imagination. But I think that when you say, can you have it all? Yeah, you can have it all. You can't have it all perfectly, but I don't know, what is perfect? I mean, how can you have anything perfectly? It's kind of boring. So I think that everything about motherhood, about trying to, trying to find the relationship between commerce and art, which I guess is a pretty big topic here. When you're taking, I see art as being the transformation of energy from one form to another. Is that difficult? Yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes focus. It takes frustration, just like raising kids does. But I think if you're talking about the feminist idea of having it all, I think that I think men have a pretty tough time too. They happen to rule the world, and they get paid more, and they have more opportunity, and they don't seem that happy to me. There's a lot of pressure on them. So I think the thing is that we have to join forces and go for, the human experience over what we consider success now, and be more in our lives and be more present. And if being more present means having it all, then definitely we can have it all. But I think you have to let go at times of defrosting your refrigerator, and you have to prioritize, and because it goes by so quickly, and you have to really decide how much. I personally think that your kids, their moral fiber is decided by about 7 or 8. Then after that, you kind of make sure they don't make any judgments that are going to really pay for the rest of their lives, because their brains aren't formed yet to make those kind of judgments. But really who they are as people, and what joy they look for, and what passions they have, and if they feel entitled to their joy, and if they feel entitled to their happiness, all that stuff is pretty much, I think in the Catholic Church it's 7, you can go to hell. Well, there's probably a reason that they chose 7. So I think, having it all for me means feeling like you're challenged all the time, that you have adventures, that you're collaborating, that you have good friends, that you have good food. If you're a mom, that that you can enjoy that, because otherwise, what's the point, really? So I think that you can, as a woman, have all that, and it's a shame that that you don't get more help sometimes. If you have a father in your house with your kids, that sometimes you have to educate them how to take some of the burden, and share the time and find time for those things, because it does take up so much of your time and focus when you're having kids, if you're hands-on, but definitely you can have it all as long as you're not thinking of all as being what your definition of all is. If it's this perfected kind of, then I think you're setting goals for yourself that are, there's no point to getting so worn out. It's very hard, and I think you have to, I know that the curse of the competent woman is forgetting how to ask for help, especially if you've been doing it forever and ever and ever. And also, this whole thing, guys, open a door now and then. You will get so many coupons for that. As strong as women are, and as much as we work hard, it's still nice plan a date now and then. Being equal, you could still be appreciative of each other, and without being weak. I think that women can be appreciative of men, and we can't do it without men. But at the same time, we're 50% of the population. You have a mother, you may even have a sister. I think that I like men. I know women even better, but I think that you know, we have to kind of listen to each other and work together. And I like what's happening now with all the lines being blurred between male, female. I mean, I find that really, really, the fluidity of the younger kids. I just did a movie about a little girl that's transitioning to a boy, and I've been talking to so many parents of kids, and that's really interesting because, I mean, you maybe not, don't want to change gender, but what the definition of gender is has become so huge. And part of that is women doing what used to be thought of as men, women having their own money. So you can meet with men on a completely different level. You don't need them the same way that, you know, people needed to have a guy back when, you know. If you've got your own money, have your own medicine cabinet, there's a bigger reason why you invite men into your life that's more interesting, to be collaborative, to challenge each other, to have adventures. I mean, that's, you know, to be able to go to a party and not worry that your guy's going to go off in a closet with somebody else, but at the same time, you don't have to be his. You know, it's very cool what's happening now in terms of relationships. And why am I single? That's what I'm asking.
Well, as we close out here, there is just one thing I want to ask you about, and bear with me on this one. I heard that you like table tennis, ping pong. So I found out that there's a book out there. It's called The Metaphysics of Ping Pong. Yeah, there is. And it says what ping pong can teach us about human nature, philosophy, and the world. Apparently, the sport is a lesson in humility, cultural competence, and the importance of keeping our mind uncluttered by convention. I think that describes you to a T.
I want that paper.
Got it. We'll send it to you. We thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
everything.
I don't think I know that one.
There's a book. It's called The Metaphysics of Ping
There's
Pong.
a lot of books on ping pong. There's all
So
kinds
ladies
of
and gentlemen, one more time to Monita Rajpal and our great participant in this very unconventional pop-up space with humility and humanity surrounding us, Susan Sarandon.
Thank you.